Hello and welcome everyone to this intersection safety video where we're talking about making right turns at intersections using the 3-2-1 plan. Now before I start to explain how to make a right turn, I first need to focus on what leads up to the right turn. Because whenever I make a right turn, legally I must do it from the rightmost portion of the lane. Now, because the lane for my direction of travel is wide enough to fit 1.5 vehicles, I need to tuck in just a little bit so that I'm nice and close to the edge of the street. So think of it as I'm trying to discourage even something as small as a bicycle from trying to squeeze in beside me. So I'm kind of aiming for the side of my vehicle to be about 45 centimeters, which is about 18 inches from the edge of the street. Now, the key to tucking in is that I want to do it sooner rather than later, because I want to be finished moving over within enough space so that my vehicle is back to being nice and straight by this point here, where I still have a distance of about 2 vehicle lengths ahead of me before I would reach the intersection. I want to give myself plenty of room to straighten out my vehicle because it's always safer to have my vehicle straight in case I need to come to a stop before I make my turn. Now, I'd like to remind you that one good habit always leads to another and then another. So as I walk you through how to tuck in properly, just remember, you'll be tucking over on all types of streets that are all different sizes, and you'll be using the seeing habit in the tuck to do things like make lane changes or for parking, etc. So trust in the process of always going through with the tuck, even in times when you feel it doesn't quite make sense at the moment, because that's the only way to create or keep up with your good habits. So here's the first 3 steps regarding tucking in. Number 1, I apply my right turn signal. Number 2, I check my right side mirror, which I do anytime I prepare to move my vehicle over, even if it's just a matter of half a vehicle's width. And number 3, I check my right blind spot just before I begin to move my vehicle over. Then, having done my scans, if all is clear, I will finish up with number 4, moving my vehicle over nice and close to tuck in by the edge of the street. Number 5, I will cancel my turn signal almost right away. Number 6, I will reapply my turn signal somewhere between the 2 or 1.5 vehicle length distance from the intersection. And before you even ask, the answer is yes. Yes, it will seem like, why bother? I'm just going to have to turn my turn signal right back on again. But remember, we're always creating habits. So work with me, people. Okay, so I'm all tucked in with my vehicle nice and straight. So the next thing we should talk about before we get into the 3-2-1 of it all is turning point. So for right turns, the rule of turning point is you'll begin to steer for your turn as soon as the front of your vehicle reaches the area where the road begins to curve. Now, it's not going to be as easy to see the turning point for right turns as it was for left turns, so because of this, it's going to be a bit of a guessing game. So what that means is, as I approach the intersection, I should be able to see where the curve of the intersection begins. But then as I get closer, that vision will disappear under the hood of my vehicle. So my only alternative is to use the opposite side of the street as my guide. So every few seconds, I'll glance over towards this area to my left, but just quick glances, blending it in with all my other seeing habits that I need to do. And then when I feel that the front of my vehicle is lined up with the curve on this side of the street, I will then look where I want to go and begin steering into my turn. Okay, we've talked about tucking in, we figured out our turning point, and now it's time to put it all together with the 3-2-1 plan and start making some turns. So let's get into it. Okay, here we are at 3 vehicle lengths from the intersection. So out comes that broom for the sweeping scan. And after the scan comes step 2, speed control. Now in this scenario, I don't have a stop sign, but I am turning. So that means I need to prepare for my turning speed. And here's a quick reminder of the rules of turning speed. So you want to be down to a speed that's no higher than 20 kilometers per hour, which rounds to about 10 miles per hour, by the time you reach 2 vehicle lengths from the intersection. Then for step 3, communication, this is where I apply my right turn signal. Okay, so I finished the regular 3 steps at the 3 vehicle length distance, and now it's time to incorporate the tucking in part of the turn. So once I've finished step 3, which was where I applied my right turn signal, I will then check my right side mirror and my right blind spot, and then I'll tuck in. Also, I must not forget to cancel my turn signal once my vehicle is nice and straight in the new portion of the lane. And now I've moved along far enough that I've reached the 2 vehicle length distance from the intersection. And as usual for this distance, I'll start off at step 1, performing the seeing habit, the quick scan. And then for step 2, speed control, this is where I'll check my speedometer to see how close I am to my goal of 20 kilometers per hour. And then I'm on to communication, which is where I'll reapply my right turn signal. Okay, I'm now at the 1 vehicle length distance from the intersection, which means I'm pretty close to making my turn. Now, I know that I've been reminding you about the importance of creating good habits, ad nauseum really, but there's one last habit that I like to add to right turns that I think is very important, and it goes something like this. Once I'm like seconds away from steering into my turn, I like to check my right blind spot one last time just to double check that I didn't miss anything important, like a kid on a bike. Now you might think, come on, I'd see the kid on the bike as I approach the intersection. Well, maybe on the most straightforward cases where the cyclist was traveling up to the intersection close to the side of the road where there were no visual obstructions. But in reality, there are more possible scenarios where you might not see that kid than when you would see the kid. So let me walk you through one quick example just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, here's a great example. As you're approaching this intersection, you can see the bushes around this house, but they're not close enough to the intersection to make you feel like you have any visual blockages. So you just continue along, closing in on making your turn with the belief that all is safe. But what you don't know is there's a young kid getting on his bicycle at this very moment who is about to come charging out from behind those bushes, anxious to go meet up with some of his buddies. And he's not thinking about anything other than how fast can I get there? So he's not going to notice that you're there. You won't see that he's there. So where will the two of you meet? I mean, it's almost like it's a child's job not to think about danger. That's why the driving age isn't 10. But now that you know better, I hope you always keep this dangerous situation in mind every time you're about to make a right turn. I always ask myself, is there a kid? Then I make my turn. I don't know about you, but I can't even imagine how I would ever get over hitting a kid. Anyways, you get the point. Let's move on. Now, because I don't have a stop sign, I'll start doing my scans, looking down at the corner to my left to help me figure out where the road begins to curve so I can figure out my turning point. And since I'm almost at my turning point, I'll go ahead and do the My Scan to go ahead and get that done and over with as well. Now, the My Scan just told me that it's 100% safe to turn, so I'm all set and ready to begin to steer into my turn. Okay, so now I want to show you two short video clips to give you an example of how much steering is required when you've set up for the turn properly. So here's the first clip using hand-over-hand steering. So it only takes 2 pulls from roughly the 10 o'clock over to the 2 o'clock position, and then a slight release of pressure from the steering wheel to finish off the turn. And now I'm using the push steering method. Now this method took about 3 short pushes up on the steering wheel from roughly the 8 o'clock position up to the 10 o'clock position. Now, before we move on, I'd like to quickly mention the Tidbits video 3-2A steering methods for both left and right turns. So in case you haven't seen this video yet, it gives a great detailed description walking you through both hand over hand and push steering methods. So in case you haven't seen it yet, it's really worth the watch. And while we're on this little break, this is also a great time to remind you to reach on over and hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then please do so as well, since that's one of the biggest ways to support this program. And if you can, tell your friends to do so as well. Okay, let's get back to it. Now, here's a quick rundown of all the steps in case you want to take a quick screenshot. So that brings us to the end of making a right turn where there was no stop sign, and next we'll go over the few steps that will change when you do have a stop sign. So starting at the 3 vehicle length distance, the only change is to step 2, speed control. Because I'm going to need to come to a stop, I will need to start working on my stopping speed. Then at the 2 vehicle length distance, I'm still just working on my stopping speed. And at the 1 vehicle length distance, because I must stop before making my turn, my seeing habit changes to the rearview mirror scan. And also at this distance, I'll need to deal with step 2, speed control, where I'll finish things up by braking to a nice smooth stop. And then once I'm stopped, I'll immediately start the process of trying to figure out when it will be safe to take off again by going through the 8 checkpoints of the quick scan on a loop if necessary until I see that it's safe to enter the intersection. Then I'll do a quick right blind spot scan answering the question, "Any kids?" And I'll finish up by performing the My Scan for my safety, and then I'll look where I want to go, drive up to my turning point, if I'm not there yet, and go! And here's another look at this quick rundown of all the steps, in case you want to take a quick screenshot of this one as well. Okay, so that takes care of turning right at a stop sign, so now all we have left is uncontrolled intersections. So in this scenario, I'm technically the vehicle on the right, so I should have right of way. And then I notice the vehicle on my left is also turning right, so the average driver might think, oh, they're also turning right, so now there's no danger. With both of us turning right, we can't get in each other's way. But we're right back to that point that I keep hammering on. Do I trust that turn signal? No, I do not. Remember our little chat about people driving with their turn signal on, but they don't turn. So, no trust. Until I see that person is slowing way down and actually starting into their turn, I'm not going anywhere. So don't allow yourself to be lulled into a false sense of security in a situation like this. Now, in this next scenario, the vehicle approaching from the opposite direction will arrive at the intersection around the same time as me, but it looks like they're going straight through since they have no turn signal on. So in a case like this, if they go straight through or even turn right, that won't affect my turn at all. So because the odds are in my favor that turning should work out fine, I'll go ahead and trust that it should be okay to make my turn. But I'll keep a very close eye on that vehicle, and if I start to feel in danger, I'll switch gears and hold back a bit. Sometimes we've got to trust a little bit, but verify. Now here, where they have their left turn signal on, the right-of-way will go to whoever reaches the intersection first. And in a case where we're both arriving at the same time, usually the person turning right will go first. But I won't fully trust in that. I'll make sure to keep an eye on that vehicle as I continue to close in on the intersection to double check that they are holding back so I can go first. And that's it. We have just finished up with the last of the common maneuvers one makes at an intersection. So I hope at this point the 3-2-1 intersection safety plan is starting to make sense and is getting easier for you. Now, because I knew I was throwing a lot of information at you at once, I chose to use scenarios where there were no visual obstructions or issues of any kind. But in reality, you're not going to come across an intersection like this very often. In fact, you'd probably have better odds of coming across a cow walking down the street in stilettos than you would of coming across an intersection with perfect visibility. Now, all jokes aside, intersection safety is a huge subject, the biggest in fact, and the most important. There are more crashes in and around intersections than almost all other crash sites combined. This includes crashes in sharp curves, steep hills in winters, highways in frozen rain, etc. So, knowing the importance of this subject matter, I want you to take whatever time is necessary for you to fully grasp the 3-2-1 plan and memorize the steps. Then, once you feel confident, join me over at the next video, Intersection Safety and Real Life Driving, where I'm going to walk you through staying safe at intersections with lots of different visual blockages. So I'll be posting that next Tuesday, but you take whatever time you need. Now, this Friday, I'll be posting the Tidbits video 3-3A, Tucking in for Right Turns, Keeping Pedestrians Safe, where I hone in on some really important details of the tuck that I want you to be sure of when you're out there driving. So add this to your list for when you're ready. Alrighty, I guess that's it for now. So until next time, take care.